Are you doing an introduction or?
Yeah, as soon as I can get this thing going here. It's loading right now.
It was on our screen, it disappeared.
I understand why this is.
My name is Lori Weber, and I have Steve Remendini with me. We work at the Highland Group, and we were responsible for brokering the insurance program for APBA. Dan, if you can go to the next screen. Just as an overview of what happened over the last year, just so that everybody has an understanding of what went on, is that we had a non-renewal notice from National Casualty, which was offered through K&K. We then went out to market to 4 other brokers, Amwins, ASIS, WSIB, and Naughton, and got some competitive quotes. They were reviewed and presented to the APBA Board of Directors, and based on the coverages, pricing, and everything else, the ASIS program was chosen. There are a few changes over last year, very minor changes that we just want to go over with today. The first one is that you're going to have to resubmit pictures with your insurance application, because any other pictures are on file with K&K. ASIS needs to have the pictures to look at your location and everything that goes on with the where your event is going to be held. In addition, minor release forms are going to have to be completed at each and every event for both racing and non-racing minors who are going to be participants within your event. And APBA and ASIS and Highland are continuing their emphasis on the risk manager position. And there has been various emails going out and everything else that has more details on the risk manager position. That's going to come from APBA, and also ASIS is going to cover that in more detail during their presentation. One of the changes that you're going to see on the application and within some of the documents is that terminology has changed to restricted area instead of using hot pit. And there's been a lot of discussion as to what the restricted area is, and just as a general description, it's going to be where the launch and crane area is, any area that's a high traffic of moving boats. We're not changing any of the current requirements, but we are putting a stronger emphasis that there are areas at each event that only participants should have access to, and they need to be fenced off. And it needs to be something stronger than caution tape. So there needs to be some type of a fence line or barrier put up so that there is a definitive line as from the regular spectator area and the restricted area. And as always, rules for entry into these areas must be followed at each and every event. That is a very brief overview of the changes that have occurred during this renewal process. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Sundquist from ASIS. He is the Senior Vice President of Client Services. He is familiar with APBA. He has worked on the account in the past when APBA obtained their insurance through ASIS, so he understands a lot of it. And he's going to go over the application process, any changes that may have been made to the application that you need to be familiar with, and then also they're going to get into more information on the risk manager position and what risk managers need to look for, just as if they were, if ASIS is coming out to look at your event, what they're going to be looking for, so that everybody has an idea of how to make their event a safe event. So Doug, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, real quickly.
Thank you, Lori. Again, my name's Doug Sundquist. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, sorry, Doug.
Dan?
There is going to be, we're going to do a little bit of question and answers. At the end of this, there should be a question, I guess, part of the webinar on the screen that has popped up on your screen. So if you have questions, please type them in there, and we will get to them right after. All you, Doug.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, my name's Doug Sundquist. I'm with a company called American Specialty. We provide insurance for sports and entertainment. That's all that we do. As Lori mentioned, our company and myself have previously worked with the APBA. What I want to do today is go through the process regarding applications for the event. Go to the next slide, please, Dan. With each application, there will be an application checklist that will kind of give you, I guess, a guide to make sure that you have all the pertinent information included in the when you submit the event. The first thing would be the insurance application checklist, or I'm sorry, insurance application. We'll look at that in a minute. You need to make sure that the application is signed, as well as the coverage condition form on page 7 is signed. The event diagram needs to be completed, and as Lori mentioned, there will also be a requirement for pictures for everybody this year, since it's American Specialty's first year back on the program. The check for the insurance should be made out to the American Powerboat Association and accompany your application. You should also include any contractors, vendor certificates of insurance. We'll talk a little bit about that later, as well as copies of contracts, anything lease agreements, so that we can make sure that you are fulfilling your requirements regarding insurance and indemnification provisions. Next. Okay, the application. Really, it's kind of a systematic approach. We've tried to keep the application as similar to the past as possible. The first section is really information about the club, name, event name, the body of water, and the event site. The second section is really the contact information. Something new that we've included would be email information as well as cell phone information. In today's environment, it's a lot easier to get a hold of people using those means as opposed to other phones, things like that. The third section would request any additional insureds. You would be required to provide a certificate to, so that those can be issued. We would need the name of the additional insured as well as the relationship to the event. Some categories would include sponsors, landowners, governmental entities, things like that. Please note that some additional insureds may not be approved depending on what the interest is and what your policy is covering. The next section would apply to limits and categories. The general liability program has a $5 million limit that would be provided by a $1 million general liability policy with a $4 million excess liability policy. There's also a participant accident policy, which has different limits for APBA members and non-APBA members. For the members, there's a $10,000 accidental death and dismemberment benefit, as well as a $20,000 excess participant accident medical coverage. For the non-members, those limits are $3,000 for both. Again, we're going to look at the description of the event, the number of days, the dates of the event, the categories, and then the premium amount would be entered there. The next section is a description of the activities. What we're looking for are all the activities that are going to be taking place at the event, types of activities. In a lot of cases, there could be ancillary activities that might be performed by other parties. In that case, we're going to ask that you get a certificate of insurance from them with the APBA as an additional insured with a minimum limit of $1 million. If you could change the slide, please. Thank you. Again, what the additional insured does is it would provide evidence that that party has insurance for what they're doing. Examples could be concert, some other festival type thing, could be a amusement attraction. That insurance, by adding you as an additional insured, would become, you would be covered under their insurance, which would be primary, which would then move the coverage from the APBA policy onto the other policy, and then the APBA policy would be excess over any other policy if those limits would be exhausted. Again, we want to know if it's in conjunction with any other event, and if so, what the event is and the name of the promoter. The next section then comes down to the underwriting information. This really relates to the event itself, and it's broken down into specific areas. The first area would be the race course. And you can see there's a few questions there about the race course, the distances, the speeds, estimated attendance, whether there's wading or swimming. The second part of that would then look at the spectator viewing areas and how those are going to be set aside from and the spectators protected, including the type of fencing, the distance from the water, those types of things. Next slide. And then, as Lori mentioned too, the next area would be the pits, and what we've gone to this year will be restricted areas and non-restricted areas. The difference really is a restricted area would be any area where spectators would not be allowed and only participants would be allowed in that area. That becomes important because of the difference between your general liability coverage and your participant accident coverage. So restricted areas need to be fenced. Again, as Lori mentioned earlier, we're not going to take caution tape, but it would be some sort of fencing with controlled authorization into that area. Each person who enters a restricted area would be required to sign a waiver and release as part of getting a pit pass, which would qualify them to be a participant. There also should be warning signs and notices in the restricted areas, and then there should be some information regarding any fueling, fire suppression, and those types of things in those areas. The next section, we're looking at security, emergency, and medical plans. Basically, how is your event going to be handled from a security standpoint and a medical standpoint? Also, ordinance compliance would be the next section. Are you meeting all the city, township codes? And do you need to obtain a permit? And if so, what does that entail? And then the next section is the patron services. This is important as it relates to spectator issues. We're going to ask questions regarding food and beverages, including will liquor be sold? If so, who will be selling the liquor? If somebody is selling the liquor, you should require that they have a $1 million policy, again, with the APBA as additional insured. If that is not the case, there are applications for liquor liability on the APBA website, and you can work with American Specialty, and we'll provide you a quote for the liquor liability. Backing up a little bit, there are also applications for any special events that we talked about earlier. If they do not have insurance, there's ability to work with American Specialty to get the insurance necessary for those events to meet the minimum requirement. Next thing we want to know are about the grandstands. How are they erected, permanent, temporary, what type of construction, how are they inspected? We're going to ask a few questions about the restrooms, and then golf carts, ATVs, and scooters. Are they at the event? Is it going to be the event staff or participants? As far as anybody operating those types of vehicles, this year there is a minimum age limit of 18 years old to do that. Next, we're going to ask for copies of the contracts as well as certificates from all subcontractors who might be doing work on your behalf. This could include somebody erecting bleachers, security companies, ambulance services, restroom services, those types of things. And then, again, you should attach the copies of the certificates of insurance as we discussed earlier on the checklist. Next would be the aircraft. If there's non-owned or aircraft at the event, each pilot and aircraft is required to provide a registration form for their flyovers. It's included in the application. We want to know the pilot's name, their license number, aircraft make, and then the insurance company that's providing coverage for the aircraft. We also want to know the policy number and the company or race boat for which the pilot is flying. This would be required for each aircraft. As far as the insurance coverage conditions, these are basically the insurance requirements and that they comply with the APBA rules. So we have taken the rules and put those into the form for compliance for the event. Again, a properly equipped ambulance with a doctor, registered nurse, paramedic, or EMT will be in attendance. From what you see there, we made a slight change on the patrol boats, and it now reads 2 patrol tow boats as an absolute minimum, must be available for duty at all times. We took the on the water off, and then only authorized personnel will operate and crew event boats. As far as the next section on the, we've also recently, due to some conflict with the rules, we've changed that section, and it now reads, when restrained boats are on the course, there will be a minimum of 2 rescue boats or rescue helicopters designated for rescue stationed on the course. They will be in position prior to the start, and they will be motorized. When unrestrained boats are on the course, there will be a minimum of 1 rescue boat stationed on the course. The rescue boat will be in position prior to the start of each heat. It will be motorized. And then all personnel on the rescue boat must be a minimum of 18 years of age, which is a new requirement for this year. In case of a fatality or serious injury to a participant, notification of a claim should be given on the day of occurrence by calling the 800 number, and then the APBA event incident report, which we'll look at in a little bit, should be turned in as soon as possible. Again, we talked about the diagrams on the course and those types of things. On the next page, we have a couple new items. Again, no one under age of 18 is allowed to operate motorized land vehicles on the event site, including golf carts, mopeds, scooters, ATVs, and quads. And then 13, you would need to initial, and you also need to initial that you've read and understood the conditions of insurance, and then sign the form, put the title, and date it. Accompanying that, there will be the event diagram and photo sheet, and this should be very similar to what you've completed in the past, and we would ask that you would include that with your application. And then there's an event course layout sheet which outlines the basic minimum standards for an APBA event site. And that should be the end of the application. As far as additional things American Specialty will be doing, we will be doing some on-site evaluations. When we do visit an event, we will look at both the physical evaluation of the facility where the event is held. So we'll be looking at things like trip and fall hazards, the bleachers, those types of things. And the other thing we'll look at is the operational evaluation of the event. So, how is it run? What procedures are in place from an operational standpoint? From a physical standpoint, we can only be there, at a specific time and evaluate that. But the operational standpoint is something that if you have the proper procedures in place, it will help catch a lot of those things. That would include, pre-event walkthroughs, checklists, site evaluations, and things like that. As far as the physical evaluation, we'll be looking at the public viewing areas, spectator protection, walkways, bleachers and seating areas. We'll also be looking at the restricted and non-restricted areas, the race course, the general grounds, including admissions, the event perimeter and the parking lot, restrooms, portable concession stands and tents, and if you do have play structures and attractions. From the operational evaluation standpoint, we'll be looking at your emergency response plan, training and preparation, medical care and transportation, your safety teams, and your fire rescue. We'll be looking at your operating management controls, the event support team, pit and restricted area operations, site cleanliness, general safety, security signage, and play structure attendance. From security, we'll be looking at law enforcement evaluation and staffing for the size of the event, as well as physical security. And then again, we'll be looking at concessions, which would include alcohol serving policies and procedures and food service operations, as well as the general sanitation. And then the last piece here, we do have the APBA event incident report, which would be turned in and completed for all incidents. And this report is to be completed by the referee or the risk manager. What we're really trying to do is track information on incidents so that we can look for any trends, spot anything, hopefully before it results in a claim, and share that type of information with the organization as a whole. Again, we'll be looking at the name of the event, the date of the incident, who the injured person was, whether it was a participant or a spectator, when the injury took place, if the person had other medical insurance, and then we have injured information, name of the person, as well as their employer information. And if it's a minor, we would take some information on the guardian or parent. One thing that we asked for, which is difficult to get, would be a Social Security number. And the main reason for that is there are new reporting requirements for Medicare-eligible claimants that need to be met, and that's how you track the information in the database. Again, we'll also look at the cause. Next slide, please. The cause of the incident, the actions leading to the incident, the type of body part injured, and the type of injury, and then what type of treatment was done on site, sent to the hospital, transported, and then what hospital, if it was sent there, was alcohol involved in the incident or a contributing factor, and if there was any prior injury. And then the last slide here relates to the incident location, the condition of the boat, the weather conditions. Again, this would be more for participant-related injuries. So that's kind of a brief overview of the program, the application process. I don't know if we'll answer some questions now.
Thanks, Doug. Once again, I'm not sure if everyone can read these, so I'm just going to read them out loud, and I'm going to let Doug, you, Lori, or Mark Wheeler answer them. Are we limited to the number of additional insureds?
No, you are not. We will provide, and there's no additional charge for them either. We'll provide all the additional insureds that you're required to by contract. K&K
asked for incident reports on any incident, whether or not there was an injury, transport, property damage, etc. The rationale was that our risk profile improved with the ratio of non-injury to injury incidents. On the ASIS contact info sheet, you asked for the incident reports only when there's an injury, fatality, auto, or property damage. Just wanted to make sure that's what you want and wonder why the change.
Actually, I believe we want the incident reports for anything that would be considered an incident. Again, we want to be able to track incidents versus claims. So I think that is a change that would need to be made in the program information. I think we've agreed that it's important to track incidents. Incidents allows you to, find what we would call near misses on claims and hopefully take corrective action. So we would like an incident report whenever possible on any type of incident, whether there's an injury or not.
You want copies of vendor contracts. Will you provide desired sample wording?
If you don't have it, a contract with the vendor, we do have sample wording that we would be more than happy to provide to anybody, yes.
One question is, will all the information presented today be posted on the APBA website? We are recording this, and we will try to get it on as soon as possible. Wonder about potential liability if a parent or guardian does not sign the waiver for a child who attends a race with a responsible adult. If parent later denies knowledge or permission for the minor attending the event with another adult, does that leave the adult club APBA liable for any injury to the minor?
Well, I think that the APBA would be liable for, or could be liable for any injury to a minor. Anyway, I think, in answer to the question, I don't think it increases the liability. I think the liability exists. I think what we're trying to do is improve supervision and accompaniment of minors in any restricted area when the waiver would be required of them. And we feel that by having somebody there that, you're in a better position to monitor activities than by having them unsupervised. I do think as far as actual racers themselves, I do believe you have a parent signature at the beginning of the year, which is something that could also be useful in a case of injury to a minor in that situation.
This next question comes from an unlimited race site. You stated a lifting device is required on rescue boats. We are an unlimited site. Is this a requirement for the center rescue boat provided by H1 or by the local volunteers?
I believe that we took that off, and as I mentioned, we had made some changes. We had made some changes since the original presentation, and that was one of the items that was removed from the actual requirements. Again, I don't know if somebody else can maybe answer what the specific requirement would be, but it's not on the new application.
Doug, we have 2 requests to post this online after we're done the PowerPoint presentation. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. At the national meeting, we were told there would be an additional fee for driver's school. What is the reason for this? It would seem to me that there's a very limited liability involved.
I think anytime you have a gathering of people, there's potential exposure for liability. I think the driving school fee is greatly reduced from the normal activity fee, and I think that contemplates the lower exposure.
Okay, and that is, it seems that we don't have any more questions, so I'm going to give another 10-15 seconds for anyone else to put one in. And here we go. If there was a safety training class, would it need insurance?
What kind of training are they talking about?
I couldn't tell you. I'm going to wait for that person to answer that.
I can try to answer that. I think are not charging for some of the training that you're doing, you know, at pools and things like that.
The question is without boating, so dunker training.
Yes, there's no charge for that. That's included.
And if you have any more, real quickly, just go ahead and type them in that box. Doug, one rescue boat is required for non-restrained classes, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay.
That was one of the changes we made earlier this week.
Right. That was at the request of APBA because we wanted to make sure that the insurance requirements match the rule books.
One person has asked, do you need to sign a waiver for capsule training? And I'm going to say absolutely yes.
Yes.
This presentation will be posted on the social forum as soon as we're done. It was asked where this is going to be posted. How are you charging for other boat classes that operate as demo shows and not racing points?
You want to answer that, Lori?
That I'm going to have to get back to you on because I don't know. I can't answer that question at this point. I apologize.
Okay.
We haven't this question hasn't been posed in the past, and we haven't had a chance to discuss that with ASIS. So we will get an answer to that.
Good question.
Very good question.
What is the difference between a driver's school and a new driver testing at a race site with no training?
Other than
well, I think what they're getting at is that a test session is no additional insurance fee, but a driving school is.
well, does the driving school generally include the dunking section also?
Right. The driving school generally involves, I mean, there's just more exposure. You have, as opposed to one person being out there, we understand that the exposure on that is not as great as when you have a full-blown driving school going on and you have multiple people. There's
And testing is a limited amount of time to last, and the driving school could be a couple hours.
or 2 days.
Or 2 days. I mean, it's you know, testing is, it's apples and oranges that you're comparing.
Will there be additional personal liability coverage for the referee, risk manager, APBA official?
They have the same insurance coverage as they have always had in the past. With this
they are considered a named insured, correct, Doug? And they would enjoy the $5 million limit.
That is correct. They are named insureds under the policy.
They would share that limit with everybody else.
Yeah, with all the other named insureds.
Yeah.
And that's the same as it has been in the past.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, I think we are out unless there's any more. But as soon as I say that, about 10 more usually pop up. Here's one more here. All right, guys, I just wanted to thank you very much, Doug, Lori, Steve, for doing this. We really appreciate it. And like I said, we will try to post this online as soon as possible. If there are any questions that were not answered, please feel free to email me, and I will be happy to get them answered for you either by Doug, Lori, or myself.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Bye-bye.